Good evening and welcome to the Housing, Health and Community Committee. Could I ask everyone to note the fire safety instruction that on hearing the alarm, you will leave the chamber via the double doors at the back, exit through the building through the main entrance and congregate in the car park. Also, please switch off your mobile phones and turn any other electronic devices being used to silent. I'd like to remind everyone present the meeting is subject to an internet webcast where recording where the proceedings are capable of repeated viewing. If you are seated in the public area of the chamber, it's likely your image will be captured by the recording cameras and result in your image being part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should leave the public seating of the council chamber and move to the upper public gallery. If members are for any reason not present for the whole of the debate on an item, you should consider and seek advice as necessary on whether it would be appropriate to vote on that item. May I remind members to declare any interest when the item is raised on the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. Mrs Bourman, have you received any apologies for absence?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillor Kendall and Councillor Mayo is substituting. Also, Councillor Russell has sent his apologies and Councillor Barber is substituting.
Okay, thank you. Item 2 is declaration of interest. Are there any declarations to be made at this point? No. Item 3 is minutes of the previous meeting held on the 15th of November, which begin on page 5. Is it agreed that I sign these minutes as a true record of the meeting held on the 15th of December, which begin on page 5 of the agenda?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Item number 4 is the Chair's report, which begins on page 13. The report sets out the work that has been undertaken as set out in the terms of reference to this committee. Do I have any questions arising from the report? Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question. It's a thank you to you personally and Ms Anderson as well. Just to say that thank you for your flexibility at the last meeting. Councillor Patel, Pound and myself would like to thank you because the Blue Flower support and the Hutton Junior Park Run are now going to benefit from the locality funding that's been approved. And we thank everyone for working in a collaborative way across the chamber, and particularly yourself as Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barber, that's really good news. So, Councillor Pound.
Yes, I just wanted to say that this was quite a joy sitting reading this afternoon. I think we're just doing so much and it really is impressive. All the groups that were described as leisure groups, they also were providing tremendous physical and mental health support. Maybe not the Dumpling Club, but it did sound great fun. But so thank you to you and to officers, and also the Brentwood Centre. There's so much that's happening there now, and I thought that was amazing what St Francis Hospice has raised from their event there. So yeah, no, it was really great. Well done.
Thank you. Councillor Pound, it absolutely is all the officers, and congratulations to them. Okay, so if I haven't got any further questions, I now propose to vary the order of the agenda to discuss item 11, which is the 2024-25 Community Governance Review as the next item. Do I have a seconder for that change?
Second that, Chair.
Okay, so we'll move to item 11. Item 11 is the Community Governance Review. The report begins on page 129 of the agenda. To advise members of the outcome of the first stage of the consultation of the Community Governance Review and to present the draft recommendations for further consultation. Just to remind members, I guess we're in a long process here. We're not deciding anything tonight apart from to put something out to consultation for the next stage. I very much hope that going out with a proposal, although not perfect, will hopefully get bigger numbers of responses. I think there's been lots of members' feedback on this, and this is why some of the changes have happened this evening. But also, Councillor Davies and Councillor Russell were both given some text that they'd like to see on the consultation, which puts it in context of the next stage for LGR. So we'll hopefully put that in there as well, that what the need is in a post-LGR world. So I am going to, at this point, move the recommendations, which are for R1, that the responses to the Community Governance Review be noted, and R2, that the draft recommendations, as set out in the appendix, be noted and adopted for stage 2 of the community governance review process. And R3, that delegated authority be granted the strategic director in consultation with the chair and vice chair of Housing, Health and Community Committee to draft and agree a suitable set of questions to progress to the stage 2 of the community governance review. Do I have a seconder?
I second that, Chair, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you very much. And I'll go to the committee. Do I have any questions? Councillor Mayo.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful that you've changed recommendation 2 because the original wording I was very uncomfortable with, to be quite honest. My concern is around, I'm glad we're going out to consultation, but we really do need, in my opinion, far more responses before we can make a change on the scale that we're being asked to. I'm a bit more relaxed about what's being proposed for existing parish councils. I think the formation of a council in my ward, so the central Brentwood area, it's not quite clear from the report, but it doesn't look like there were that many responses from that area. CM14 is the postcode for most of that area. It does include Kelvin and Hatch and South Weald. I only counted 22 responses from there, and you're going to propose to introduce a brand new council with extra council tax. I would like to see a case presented and backed with far more enthusiasm by our residents before we proceed with that. So I'd very much like to know how we're going to improve the response rate in the second phase, what the approach is going to be to that. And also I would ask, it would make it a lot easier for us, rather than print a load of postcodes, it would have been helpful to see ward by ward what the response rate was, so we can see of the affected areas how many responses have we had.
Thank you, Councillor Mayo. I was actually supposed to say, Mr Campbell, do you have anything to add? I missed that bit. But hopefully you can add and answer some of Councillor Mayo's questions at the same time.
Thank you, Chair. That was going to be my first point, actually. Yeah, I think that, as you've summed up, Chair, the report is before you. It was the first part of the consultation. We're moving on to the second part. Just to give some assurance to members that we have already liaised with Association of Local Councils in kind of discussing how we're going to get better results from the next consultation, how we're going to engage with the public to ensure that we do get a better take-up. I think because of the situation we're in, we have already engaged with the Association of Electoral Authorities. Clive Joyce, you may have met, we did a briefing with members on this paper about 2 weeks ago, or just under a week actually, ago. We went through things. We expect to get a bigger response the next time because there are proposals actually moving forward in the second part of the consultation, but we're already engaging, as I said, with the local councils group so that we can put something out there, we can engage with the community better and get a better response and take up for the next time.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. So that's actually going to be one of my points. So thank you, Councillor Mayo. One of the questions I was actually going to make was how do we improve the number of responses? Because obviously when you read through Appendix A, you have out of 70 responses and then out of 68 responses. So obviously it'd be good if we could make residents more aware through a campaign, possibly before the consultations launched, to advise residents that a new consultation is coming. Interestingly, I do wonder whether we need to do some form of education, because obviously where it says those respondents were then asked what form of governance, and only 33 respondents gave a view, and I wonder if that response is low because people are not aware what it means by the form of governance. And then on the last page with question 12, where it mentions that the West Horndon area name was questioned, it also contains East Horndon, and that both were separate parishes until 1934. And I think what this highlights is that we need to be sensitive to local history and make sure that that local history is not lost. And then my final point would be with the second stage consultation process. It will commence once we are aware of the new unitary. So again, about education, just making sure that the residents are aware what's actually happening. So that's just my points in the report, but thank you for all the work that's been undertaken.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. I think the consultation is after the elections that this will go out, and hopefully the government's timetable is that we'll hear about LGA in March, this month. So, yes, so hopefully that it's in timetable around that. I think we would probably not put it out if we weren't sure about what LGL was doing. Councillor Gorton first. Sorry.
And I also noted that we had a response from Ipswich. If you look
So,
at one of the postcodes was an Ipswich postcode.
I guess I would say you always get some strange people in consultations, but I don't know if Mr. Campbell wants to answer that, or is it just unusual?
I'm going to say it's probably unusual. It could have been maybe where they live now. I'm not too sure. I have to pick that up. I can't really answer. Apologies.
Okay, Councillor Gorton.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak, even though I'm not a member of your committee. Yes, I welcome this consultation, and I welcome more parish councils being established in the borough, particularly with local government reorganisation about to happen, or happening in 2 years' time, to be precise. Obviously, LGR is going to mean a reduction in the number of councillors representing Brentwood in the new unitary authority. We're told it could be anywhere between just 12 councillors and 21 representing the whole of Brentwood. Even 21 is quite a reduction. It's almost a 50% reduction on the number of councillors we have at the moment. So I think that makes the role of parish councils even more important. As some of you will know, I have been a parish councillor in my time, and I regularly attend parish council meetings both at Ingatestone and Mount Nessing, so I have a fair idea of how they're run. Some of these proposals here be worked up by consultants, and some of them don't seem to make a lot of sense to me. I think any new parish councils should fit in with existing ward boundaries, assuming that under LGR ward boundaries aren't changed substantially. There's a proposal in here for a mega parish council covering both Shenfield and Hutton, and I can't really see how that would work, particularly with Shenfield about to have a population explosion as the RO3 sites are built out.
Sorry, Councillor Gordon, before you, I just want to interrupt there, because there are some specific amendments, probably you haven't got them on your desk, that we're actually moving forward. I'll read them out, and then it might help your rest of your talk. So the specific amendments we're making before we go out to consultation is separating Shenfield and Hutton by the railway into two distinct parishes. Number 2 is moving polling districts DP and CR into Worley Parish from Brentwood. That's making the railway the boundary, map 3. Including the entire triangle south of Ingatestone between the railway A12 and Church Road into Ingatestone from Mount Nessing on map 4. An alternative for the groupings of Southfield and Pilgrim's Hatch will be presented in the consultation. These are all based on members' feedback, but also to make it really clear that railways and dual carriageways are clearer boundaries than one side of a road versus another.
Thank you, Chair, and possibly the Ongar Road as well, separating Pilgrim's Hatch and Southfield. Thank you. That's very reassuring. Thank you.
Councillor Sankey.
Thank you, Chair. Well, actually, fellow councillors have pretty much said what I wanted to say. But yes, the response rate 89, actually, because CM4 is in Gatestone and Friday, that's easy to identify. It was 7, which is not great, even though we do have a very excellent parish council. But yes, I think the other points that have been made, people actually understanding how important potential parish councils will be in the new world of LGR, I think that maybe will concentrate minds. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chair. I really reiterate, I'm getting my teeth in here, reiterate, Councillor Slade's comments. I think half the reason that the consultation results were so poor was because people didn't understand what was actually the process, because there hadn't been any introduction, any explanation. I think if they'd realised, as has been pointed out by the people, it's a whole new level of local democracy where things are taken further away in the unitary organisation, I think we'll get much better responses. I think this is what the problem was. So hopefully, if it's actually explained fully, then people might have more interest and not just say, well, that's Brentford Council's job. Let them get on with it.
Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, first of all, I need to put on record, I'd like it recorded in the minutes, that obviously I oppose local government reform because I don't see that there's a demand for it from residents. Couple of things, if I may. So we talk about proceeding to the second stage of this community governance review. So I assume that that's a legal framework which councils are obliged to follow that's set in law. I see you're nodding, Chair. And on that basis, I mean, Councillor Sankey said he didn't consider 7 responses from Ingatestone as being, I think the word was not great, or the 2 words, sorry. I think that's the understatement of the year. I do not think that you can interpret that is consent to go to the second stage of a formal process on such a small sample. Realistically, we've just consulted about the recycling pilot in part of Ingatestone, where from 500 households you had about 100 replies, which is in excess of the number of replies across the borough to this really important question of governance. I hope and I pray that local government reform will be abandoned by the government, and if there's anything you can do there, please do. But if it isn't, and if there was a demand for parishes, I would have no problem with it. But it needs to be clearly demonstrated before we set up. The whole point of local government reform was to reduce the tiers of local government. It wasn't to replicate them again at a different level. And if you were to ask the public, I've never been asked on the doorstep for local government reform. There are some people that fill in some of our surveys and say that they're in favour of it, but it's a very small percentage of the population. And I've certainly never had anyone, probably other than one of my council colleagues in the Hutton area, who's advocated for a parish council in Hutton. There are many chairs of parish councils tell me how it's difficult to get people. Many members of parish councils are co-opted, not elected, therefore lack democratic mandate. And in particularly the current volatile political climate, it means you can get all kinds of people brought onto parish councils, truthfully. I think if this is to go to a formal second stage, you should have more than 87 people replying, and you should have an overwhelming majority of a larger number replying. So I'm going to vote against, not because I oppose the principle of the possibility of parish councils, but because I don't think you've got the numbers there to justify that that's what the residents of Brentwood would like. And you may say that that's how we're going to get the numbers, but I don't understand why you can't extend stage 1 to get to a point where you have a larger sample, and then we can make an informed decision. So I'm sorry, I'll be voting against.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Councillor Baldock.
I am a parish councillor and have been for several years. And as a parish councillor, I think I'd struggle to answer the questions because I don't know what the new role of the parish, and I'm not saying anybody here does, but I don't know what the new role of the parish councils will be, because I don't think that's been decided yet, has it? And if it has, is there more funding? Is there less funding? Is there more financial responsibilities? Our our parish clerk works part-time at the LGA, and she scaremongers constantly about, oh, is he going to have to look after this and look after that, and there won't be any extra money. But she's always trying to get us to put the precept up, I think. Now, my concern is that if I don't understand what the role of the new parish councils will be and how it will be expanded and how it will be structured, how can residents answer these questions?
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
It's more an observation.
Yeah, Councillor. I mean, I guess what powers the new unitary would give to a parish council will be up to that new unitary. But I think what we need to say is what powers would a parish council have in any case, and be clear and let them, you know, the ones they already have, because they will have those as a given. For example, like statutory planning consultees and things like that, that they would have in areas where they don't have parish councils, they don't have that tier of government. I think we're moving to the next stage of consultation. If we do not get a significant number of people coming forward and saying that they really want parish councils, it will be up to elected members to interpret that to say we should not move forwards. But I do think the next stage of consultation, where you present an actual real plan, rather than what type of governance do you want, which was the first question, is really vague. And I think actually presenting parish and town councils and say, this could be what you get. Do you like it or not? Or do you want to say no? I think it hopefully will get a bigger response. If we don't get a big response, we'll have to consider going forwards. Councillor Slade?
Thank you, Chair. So sorry, it's just obviously coming back on your points, Councillor Davies' points, and actually Councillor Barber's, because if you look at pages 4 and 5 of the report, I think it actually sums it all up very nicely. So point 3.1, the committee is invited to consider the results of the first consultation and the proposed approach to the second consultation. Well, that's what we've just done. As a committee, we've just considered the results, and we're considering an approach to the second consultation to provide more education. So I think obviously this has been a very important item to take, how to take the next stage forward. Should the committee determine a second consultation to take place, it's anticipated to be between the 11th of May and the 22nd of June. That's given us a lot of time to actually get this second stage correct and take these points on board. The options being that we can continue to stage 2 and progress to the second phase, or we do not proceed. But then I think that if we don't proceed with a more informed approach, we're then not giving a fair decision to the residents. So it's unlike me to disagree with Councillor Barber, but I do disagree with Councillor Barber, and I do think it's important we do go through to the second stage, but with that key phrase of the proposed approach, and I think that's what we need to work on.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. If there are no further speakers, I will just move to the vote on the recommendations. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Okay, that's passed. Thank you very much. Item 5 is the event plan on... Sorry, officers that are here just for that item, you can leave. Yeah. Got a full bench at the front here. Item 5 is the event plan on page 21. The council organises a number of events, including Strawberry Fair, Family Fun Days, and Lighting Up Brentwood as large-scale community events in the borough. The planned event programme for 26-27 is set out in Appendix A, which is subject to member agreement and annual budget setting process. Mrs Anderson, do you have anything to add to the report?
Thank you, Chair. I've got nothing to add, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. I will move the recommendation on page 21, which is members approve the event plan as set out in Appendix A, subject to the annual budget approval. Do I have a seconder?
Second that, Chair.
Thank you. So I'll now move to the debate. Has anyone got any questions or any points on this event plan? No? Okay, well then I will just move to the vote then. All those in favour? Okay, and that's unanimous. Thank you very much. That's passed.
Can we just place on record across the chamber how grateful we are to the officers for the efforts that they put into these events. They are very much appreciated by the residents, and I know there's a terrific amount of work undertaken by officers and yourself and your Vice Chair to deliver those. So thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Item 6 is the annual health report. The report begins on page 31 of the agenda. The report sets out the area profile for Brentwood. This is presented annually to the relevant committee. I will move the recommendation on page 31, which is the members note the report and annual health profile as set out in Appendix A. Do I have a seconder?
Second, Chair, and reserve my right to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms Anderson, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to draw your attention to the report. You've got a coloured copy on your desks in front of you as well. Where we've got preventable mortality rates, these are some of the projects that we can do to reduce those mortality rates. So if it's around no smoking, reduce drinking, doing more exercise, things like that. So they're preventable things that will, increase your mortality rates. Although it's got suicide, there is an indicator that has spiked. We're looking at a percentage per 100,000 population, so that's more than Brentwood. And generally it is more male suicide rates that we have. And on the last page, it's just really looking at the priority areas for the Health and Wellbeing Board. So we've got their early years, that's up to year 6. So we're looking at some lunchbox swaps to create more awareness around healthy lunchboxes that we would put in there. Smoking prevalence in pregnant women to try and reduce that. So again, that's more awareness for those cohorts of people, and increase suicide awareness and prevention where we can. And there is a target with the National Health Service as well around frailty and falls prevention for our elderly population. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Just for eagle-eyed Councillor Sankey, on page 34, it should say Brentwood under economic implications rather than Rochford. Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor Sankey. Do I have any? Councillor Sankey?
Nothing of any great moment, I think, but on page 36, the last bullet point, it's about most common languages spoken. Any other European languages, South Asian languages, and then Polish. Any particular reason why? It's Polish is European, isn't it? Unless, I thought it was, anyhow.
I think it's how it's been accounted for. So we go on ONS data as well as fingertips data for health. So it might be how it's calculated on one system rather than another. If that makes sense.
Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. Points 1.10 and 1.11, so 17% of reception age children and 26 of year 6 were recorded as overweight. And obviously the 18.5 that are active for less than 30 minutes. I read that and thought, what can we do as a Borough Council to improve this? And one of the suggestions that I'd like to consider is that we look into providing outdoor gyms, which would provide free and accessible fitness and opportunities to improve physical health, mental health and community engagement, but also the fact that obviously it would help improve cardiovascular health and build muscle and improve balance. That also may help with some of the under 75 mortality rates from circulatory disease and obviously with the fall. So that's my points there. And regarding point 1.7, we talk about adult smoking rates, but I'm interested that we've not actually put anything there from the harm from vaping. It's bubble lungs widely reported, so I think that we should be obviously making reference to the harm from vaping also. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. I think we also had a vaping discussion. So, Ms Anderson, do you have anything to add to that? I think it's hard to get the data on that.
I think with vaping, there's a lot of work that's being done with schools at the moment around vaping and the impact. But I think, again, because it's quite a new thing, it's just collecting the data to know what the long-term impact is of vaping. But it is being looked at by the NHS as well.
Thank you. Councillor Mayo?
Yes, just a very quick follow-up on Councillor Slade's point regarding 1.10 in terms of the overweight statistics. What period has that increase occurred over? I can't find anything that tells me that.
Sorry, Mrs. Ashton.
Is that year on year or is that over a longer period?
We do an annual assessment, a joint strategic needs assessment, so that's done on an annual basis, so that'll be an increase from the previous year. So again, it can be a small number that impacts that percentage increase. Because it could be a small cohort of population that we're looking at, because it's a year 6, if you like. It's not the full population of Brentwood. It's just the numbers that are in year 6, so that could be because we're looking at...
So it could have gone up from 3 to 4, for example, and that's 50% increase. Yes.
So it can skew that percentage, if that makes sense.
Comparing the previous year 6 to the new year 6?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Not sure whether that's a particularly good basis of statistical... Anyway, okay. So it could go down by the same amount next year then?
Yes. We can do that. I mean, I can bring an annual report back and then we can do a trend analysis as well. That's not a problem. Yeah.
What I would say, Councillor Mayo, is it's not going down. It's steady across most age ranges, including 40s, 50s and 60s, that it's going up. It's not going down. And that's in affluent areas as well as deprived areas, so it's in general.
Councillor Sankey?
Thank you, Chair. Just actually picking up on Councillor Slade's suggestion of outdoor gyms. We do have one in Mount Nessing and we do have one in Ingatestone, and they're both well used when it's not raining, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think there's one in Whalley as well. I'm not, sorry, Councillor Davies.
As Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, I've been very involved with the working groups that are actually heading up lots of these issues. So we have combating obesity, smoking cessation. But just picking up on what you've said, Everyone Active is a very active member of the Health and Wellbeing Board, and they do run a lot of schemes throughout the year and during school holidays as well. So maybe we just need to get that better publicised and get that information out there, because, you know, there are opportunities for young people and adults to be involved in a healthier way of life. But it's still concerning, isn't it, that 6.8% of children in this borough live in absolute poverty. Yes. I mean, that is horrendous, really. And, well, I don't know, we've got no magic wand to address that immediately, but obviously we need to support and make sure they access good nutrition and healthy living. But from the weight point of view, there's a lot of courses going on from a healthy eating point of view. And Essex County Council Youth Services, who link in again with our Health and Wellbeing Board, run courses at Hermit, and they've just run one where they were teaching young carers, and I met them last week between the age of about 8 and 12. They'd done about a 7-week course on cooking, and they were there presenting what they'd done during that course. And I have to say, it was amazing, because obviously it's a lot more than just cooking, isn't it? It's to do with mental health support as well. And each one of them got an air fryer as a gift at the end of it for having taken through. So there's no easy answers, but there are things that we are, as a council, very concerned about, and we are looking to address it in any which way we can.
Councillor Warnock.
It's all right. It was just about the childhood obesity, and it was just a point of warning, and it's something I think I'm going to come back to later. And a little from my experience. My daughter went to St Martin's School. She's now, she's gone on to be a chef, and she works for a school catering company covering the south of England. And it seemed like fairy tale when her company was pitching to provide the food to St Martin's School, and she's the one who goes and you know, once the salesmen have done their job, she's the one who does the presentation. But she didn't get opportunity to do that presentation because the people running her sales says we can't afford the kickback. Basically, St Martin's wanted, I think, £1 million over the period of the tender in a kickback to them, so they can put that back into their school fund, which basically means that's money being taken from the school dinners. The reason they can't do that is because their offering is a much higher. Their pitch, their way of going to business is to give the best, and they're like, well, we can't give the best and give that size kickback, so we're out. And I think I'm going to be coming back to this area of business model later on. Cheers.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Baldock. I very much hope you pass that on to the County Council as well, so they can deal with that for us as County Council. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair. I'm assuming the hospital admissions caused by unintentional and deliberate injuries in young people is sports related, because it's higher than the English average. So I'm assuming that we're...
Sorry, Councillor Barber, it can be a mixture. I think the issue is sometimes it's unexplained, so it can be broken arm, broken leg. They could have been in the house. Doesn't necessarily mean a sports injury. So.
The other one is that the other question I've got is that unless I've missed it anywhere, we talk about smoking, but we don't talk about drug addiction. It's pervasive in whatever economic level of the community you go into. Do we measure? Have I missed it, or is it there, or why is it not there? I know it would only be an estimate, but
I think that's the issue that we have at the moment, is collecting that data for known drug users. So we'll have that from the agencies where people are working with them, but necessarily those people that are not working with those agencies. So there's probably a higher proportion of drug use than any agency is going to report on, if that makes sense. But again, I can include that into next year's report as well, if you want that information, if we can get hold of it.
the final thing, if I may, so this list is our list, not a national list, so we can add to it.
The information we get is from other sources, so there's Fingertips, which is health data, and then you've got the ONS data that is collected on an annual basis as well. So we're relying on those sources, and we've also got health colleagues as well that provide those other sources of information around, if you look at drug and alcohol. So it's just really, from a member's perspective, it's what information would be useful for you for us to include in the health profile report.
And just my final suggestion might be, Councillor Patel and Pound and myself have come across an awful lot of people where one partner has passed away quite a few years in advance of the other, and loneliness is something that's mentioned on the doorstep by an awful lot of people to us. And we are now going online for everything. You can't come into, you won't be able to go into the NatWest to the bank and do that soon. I do think if we can get a measure of an estimate of the number of people that would say that they are suffering from loneliness, it would allow us to align our resources to some events which may be able to meet the needs of that section of the population, because I think there's a lot of elderly who the only person they speak to is the person they buy the newspaper off, and I think that's incredibly sad. And if we can work out the level of the problem, then we can put the response in at the appropriate level as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Mr Roast, did you want to come in on that one?
It's interesting, Councillor Barber. We did have that information during COVID, and then after COVID that stopped, which is such a shame that we couldn't understand where our vulnerable people were and then appropriately support them. So that's something that I think we will certainly have a conversation about to see what pressure we can put to get an idea, because finding those people is also an issue.
I was just going to add as well, we've got our Community Connect vehicle where we try to go out to those communities, so we try and take stuff to them as much as we can.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We'll now move through the vote on the recommendations on page 21 of the agenda. All those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll move to item 7, which is the Renters' Rights Act 2025. The report begins on page 43 of the agenda. The report is to provide an overview of the Renters' Rights Act, which has now been enshrined in law. The report sets out the main provisions of the legislation, the new responsibility where it places on the council and the implications of the council's resources. Mr. Brace, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is a new piece of legislation and we have a very short period in which to put it into place with an election in the middle. So apologies for that. We now, for your information, have a project manager that's working on this full time to ensure we can meet the date, an expert from London Borough of Newham, and we're very lucky to have him. So I'm happy to take any questions. It is a complex area of work. There are still some gaps in guidance that we've not yet received, but we are working, and I can tell you already we've got stuff drafted, ready for comment. We are working at a fast pace to ensure we deliver.
Okay, thank you. I will move the recommendations on page 44. That R1 that notes that the progress made to date in the implementation of the Renters' Rights Act 2025 as detailed in this report. Approve the formation of a members' working group to support the development of policies for the implementation of the Renters' Rights Act as detailed in this report. Just for members' information and the speed that we need to make these decisions before May, we decided that the committee will be Councillor Davis, myself and Councillor Slade. R3 is notes that a report recommending the approval of the draft policies for the implementation of the Renters' Rights Act will be presented at Ordinary Council on the 23rd of March as detailed in this report. Do I have a seconder?
A second, Chair, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you very much. And I'll move to the debate. Any questions or comments from the members? Sorry, Councillor Sankey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a very tight timetable, but certainly the quicker in place, the better, in my opinion, but there we are. The only thing I would just point out on page 47, where it says 1.14, the council has been awarded £19,000 in notes is considered insufficient to prepare and implement the new legislation. And then 1.18 probably sums it up perfectly in the fact that the lack of sufficient staffing resources to put this in place. So I think we acknowledge it's going to be a difficult, but it needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sankey. I think it is understood that as this goes forward and as the further levels of implementation happen, more resources will be needed to implement this. Councillor Pound.
Sorry, this is embarrassing. I should know the answer. But exactly, where is our role? How do we fit into this? Obviously, this is a government ruling and it's a private landlord. Where do we fit in? Where is our responsibility?
Thank you, Councillor. I think it mainly is on enforcement of these laws, but I'll pass it to Mr. Brace, who will point that out.
So our main role will be enforcement, but we'll also be responsible for gathering data. At this moment in time, we do not know how many private landlords there are because there's no list anywhere of them. So that list will be created as part of this, which I think is right and proper for us to be able to do that. But mostly it's going to be an enforcement, and that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be serving a fine, but it's going to go and make sure that properties are appropriately, like our own properties have to be, to ensure those properties are well looked after and suitable for people to live in.
But we have to know they're there, don't we?
Yes, so it will be a requirement for people to register those.
Thank you. Councillor Mayo.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to follow up your point there, Councillor Pound, because I think that's very good. First of all, really good report. It's the best explanation of the Renters' Rights Act I've had. Now I understand it far better than I did a couple of days ago. So thank you very, very much for the report. It sort of follows on Councillor Pound's point. We're basically starting from zero, aren't we? So this is going to be something that develops over time. The points about required funding and all the rest of it and capacity are very well made. I'm trying to understand, in terms of the enforcement role, are there any definitions in terms of proactive aspects of enforcement, or is this going to be, we're just going to have to react to what we get told about? What's the approach supposed to be in terms of the law, and what can we actually do at this point and in future?
Mr. Race?
I think the reality is it will be how often the phone will ring, until we get a grip of how many poor properties there are in the borough, because that we do not know. That said, currently, anybody that's living in private accommodation that's got concerns about their health and safety, damp and mould, all those things, can ring environmental health and we can go out. So we have a similar power now, but it would only be through a complaint. So once we start getting more proactive about what the council's responsibilities are, that may generate more people to contact us. So we've got an idea of how many we've had in the past, which thankfully has not been a tremendous amount, but we've got about 4,000, we think about 4,000, and that's from the census from 2011. So whether it's a lot higher than that, the same or less, we don't know. So we're not expecting to be inundated, but of course we will have to prepare for what we're going to do if it is. So we'll be keeping an eye on it. So yes, we'll be proactive because we will let people know, landlords to register, all the stuff that we'll need to get in place. So we'll be as proactive as we can, and then we'll start taking there are some selective licensing schemes in certain areas that behave quite similar to this. So we're kind of learning from them how much that generates in terms of work and how much that may need in terms of Brentwood. It won't be an exact science, but we'll be prepared. But obviously we'll be in short supply of people that can do that enforcement. But it's what it is, but we're fairly planning for it.
Okay, quickly come back. So in terms of the standard that a renter should expect, in terms of the standard of the property, I noticed that the national standard isn't actually applicable until 2035 or something. I don't understand why that is, but that's not our responsibility. How will those renters know what they should expect? Are we going to be doing some form of communication when this is launched to say, right, if you're in private accommodation, this is what you should expect from your property? What's the approach going to be?
We're doing two things actually. The tenants, and for me, and certainly for Lauren, we don't want people to lose those homes. We don't want landlords to walk away from being landlords, because we need those homes to put people in. So we want to work with landlords to help them understand what they may need to do, and we'll also quite rightly let tenants know what they have the right to. So it's getting that balance right. We don't want to be walking around, clubbing our landlords for being, oh, you should have fixed that door quicker. We kind of want to work with them so that we're not constantly going out and enforcing, because some of the fines are significant. They are not little fines. So we don't want to be going out punishing landlords for making a one-off mistake, but we would want them to be running a good property. So we've got to get that balance right, and that's part of what we'll have to discuss when we're doing the policy and also the fining regime.
Thank you, Councillor Mayo. Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. As a committee, we're all supportive to see renting made more secure and affordable, along with giving tenants more security. However, there are concerns that the Renters' Right Act may have negative effects, including reducing the supply in the private rented sector. So just going on from that, I do just have some questions and points. So would you rather go through them individually or do them all at once? What would you rather?
If you could just do them all at once, I guess. Just let know where, I guess,
Okay.
we're not the government, so we can't actually change this legislation.
It is not. So, so regarding the renters' right readiness, point 1.8, a project delivery group's been set up. Who's been selected for that group? Recommendation 3 says about the approval of these draft policies being at ordinary council. Are they the policies of 1.9, 1.10 and 1.11? 1.12, it says we will need to review our staff resources. When will that review commence? Point 1.16, I'm just obviously concerned there that this could result in a court backlog. Point 1.17, will we look to outsource or will that be in-house? 1.18, obviously with LGR, how will this work going forward? We'll be looking to combine resources. 1.19, I'm assuming those funds have come from point 1.14, so the £19,000. Point 1.2, the need for additional resources and the capacity to meet the council's legal obligations will need to be kept under close review. Who and how? Point of the key milestones, 1.19, how much of that's been undertaken. And then my final point, just to do with the appendix, is obviously the government document states the Act's remaining provisions will be brought into force into 2 phases. Have we started to commence any work for the second phase for late 26? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. I saw Mr. Brace.
Some of them might be.
As much as you can, Mr. Brace, I guess if you could answer some of those points, and I guess if we've missed anything, I can follow up with emails. But Mr. Brace.
So the group that we've got of officers at this point in time includes environmental health, who will hold the baton for it, housing, obviously, comms, legal, finance, so all the appropriate people around the table so that we're not making decisions without the organisation being aware. Staff resource, we are starting to look at that now, but as I said, we don't know how long the piece of string will be of how many people have got to hold it up. So, but we're working with a nucleus of people that we've already got, which is about sufficient for what Brentwood needs, but we're unsure what that might be in the future, which is where we're looking at some flex. Yes, there could be an issue with the courts, but that's only if they don't pay the fine, of course, because it's a fixed penalty notice. So if they don't pay, then they'll go to court, and then it would also, you know, is in the best interests that we do take them. There may be a reason they're not paying, all those kind of bits. So yes, it will inevitably lead to more people that potentially could go to court. But again, if we have a good relationship with landlords, the idea of this scheme is not for us just to be throwing fines out to pay for everything. We'd much rather work with landlords to get them to comply in a much better way. Yes, we're working across Rochford and Brentwood. That means that we've been able to get a far better person than we probably could have afforded on our own, and we're only doing the job once, but we're able to do it for 2 councils. So it's working out quite beneficial. 120 legal obligation. What was that one? Yes, so what we've already done is Q4 of next financial year, we're going to have an independent audit of what we've done from now, or previous to now, to the time of when they do the audit, so that we know we've got it right, and then we'll also have a bit of learning that we can double check, and equally the auditors will also have been out to other places, so we want to learn from that. We have a key milestones document already. That's pretty much phase 1, 2 and 3. We're not in 2 yet. We're definitely sat in 1, but as I said earlier, I've got a draft of the policy, the enforcement policy, and I've got a draft of basically the fees and charges, the civil penalties. So we have a draft of that. There's still a bit of a way to go, but we've got the words down. They're being legally checked to make sure what we've written is legal. That doesn't mean they're final, but it's just no point you agreeing something and someone says, that's a good idea, and then we go to legal and they say, that's not quite legal. So we've had legal look at it, so we've got something now to work from. I'm less nervous that I've got something I can hold on to and say, well, we'll be compliant if we approve that, if nothing else. Have I missed anything significant? Yes, they are, yes. Those two policies are the ones, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Slade.
And it's,
Councillor?
sorry, it'll be more likely, it'll be more likely that we'll come back later with a full corporate enforcement policy that will cover all enforcement rather than having all the separate ones. So but we've not had time to do that. We'll do that all in one. So take our time to get to that point.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, I've missed where it says it on here, but are you planning on introducing fees for this? Because other areas have done for the registration, and if you do, you know, and I'll probably, if that's in a year or over a year's time, I won't be here to comment on it. I very much doubt. If you do, don't do 5 years up front, because then you are clobbering landlords, but rather just do it annually or set up a standing order or something like that. Because I am a private landlord, not in Brentwood, I hasten to add, and they're saying, right, we want 5 years up front now for each property, which obviously that's quite a lump to find suddenly. So I would advise not doing that if you don't want to clobber landlords. That's it, really. And are you going to bring in fees?
There will be, but as it's in the second stage, we're not considering that as part of the charging for the first. It wouldn't be my decision. That will be a discussion with members of the committee and probably wider with other members, because it affects every member in the borough. Wasn't looking, certainly not considered that would be a block. I haven't got to that point of thinking that at the moment. So it's things to think about, but I certainly wouldn't, as I said right at the beginning of this, mine and Lauren's issue is we do not want landlords to move out of the sector. We want them to stay in. So we'll do everything we can to keep good landlords and supporting others to get good, so that we've got decent homes across Brentford.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock, and I just want to point out I'm also a landlord, if I have to declare that interest. That is all the speakers. We'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendations? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Now we're approximately halfway through all the items, and we're an hour in, so we can keep going or go slightly faster. That would be useful. Item 8, which is 2025-26 quarter 3 performance. The report begins on page 73 of the agenda. The report seeks approval of the committee for the proposed, I'm not sure that's the right, sorry, hang on, page 73 of the agenda. So, I'll just say that. Okay, and the report has one recommendation, which I'll move now, which is that members receive and note the quarter 3 performance report, which provides an update on the progress to date against the corporate plan priority deliverables, corporate projects and formal complaints under the A Place to Call Home theme. Do I have a seconder?
Second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms Stretch, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add, but happy to take any questions.
Okay. Have we got any? Okay, Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding Appendix C with the pie chart where it's got quarter 3 complaint category, my concern here is we have service process not followed, service other, staff conduct, and then time and delay. But when we look at Q3 upheld complaint summary, we have missed access appointments and also delay to repairs. But the pie chart doesn't actually break down who's actually at fault. So where we've got service process not followed, it doesn't break down there if that's as a result of Brentwood Borough Council or if that's a result of access. So if at some point we could have some form of breakdown just to see where the actual complaints lay, I'd be grateful. And then going back to point 6, where we've got the missed access appointments, and it says the actions and remedies, compensation offered and work scheduled. Can I just check that that compensation's been paid by Access and not by Brentwood Borough Council?
Thank you, Councillor Slade. Just want to just a quick question on this one with all the pie charts on, that it should be Q3 complaints received rather than compliments received on the top left. That was pointed out by Councillor Mayo. Unless we are only receiving one compliment a month. So.
The report,
On page 85. There. Q3 compliments received.
yeah, no, it should be compliments.
It should be complaints, right? Oh.
It's not my report, but yeah, it's that first bit is compliments received in the corner. So there's been 3 compliments received.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, it is compliments. Oh, right.
People are yes, no, we are reporting compliments as well as complaints to give a balanced view.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, Ms. Stretch, did you find answering Councillor Slade's questions? Sorry. Thank you.
So this report is put together by Customer Services, but it obviously comes to all committees. So in relation to Q3's performance, I can get a breakdown regarding the conduct of staff, and we can email that to all committee members as an action afterwards. What I would suggest is Mrs Meek, who is the corporate manager responsible for this area, will be due to do her annual complaints report, specifically around housing complaints and different bits and pieces as a requirement from the Ombudsman, and that report would be due to come to the next committee in June. So what I will ask her to do is, when she does the annual report, is to make sure she makes that breakdown. But I can take this back and ask for a breakdown that we can email to you all separately regarding the conduct. And in relation to the compensation, yes, if it is found that Axis are at fault, then that compensation will be paid by them as per the contract.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all the housing team for everything they do for us, responding to our numerous requests and often and vast majority of the time sorting everything out very well. But my problem really does rest with 2 things. One, on page 78, the middle entry, ensure council-owned properties and estates are well managed and maintained with tenants and leaseholders supported to have an active voice in decision-making about their homes. I know that we do ask them through the tenant talkback, and activities defined under the HRA service plan and housing improvement action plan, which I do have a great deal of respect for. My problem is that at the moment my perception from feedback from tenants, and I think my colleague agrees with me, and Councillor Patel is not here tonight, is that the quality of our current housing stock and the service performance of Access is not green, as this report states. Now, if you're measuring there the plan, the rolling programme of investment, then I would agree with you that that's fine that it's green. But if we're talking about the experience of the average housing tenant who's waiting for something to be fixed and not hearing back for a long time until someone wonderful like Carol gets involved to sort it all out, if we waited for Access to fix it, I'm sorry, I don't have confidence that it would get fixed properly. I feel that Access are delivering at a low quality level. I'm not happy with it. And I think that the reason it's just about hanging together at the moment is because of the efforts of the housing team to make it work. It's better I say this honestly and fairly and openly rather than, nod my head, put my hand up. So I'm going to be voting against this item or abstaining, one of the two. Can't decide which yet at the moment, because I just don't think the performance is there for the average tenant escalating issues to us, because Access are turning up sometimes without appointments. They are asking people, where are you, to find out that they're at work. They are cancelling appointments at short notice. And this is for people, some people who, if they don't go to work, don't get paid. For many people, you can work at home from a laptop and you can do it. But if you're working as a postman or postwoman, or you're working at a checkout till, you cannot do that and be in to receive Access. And Access are letting down the council and the housing team from my perspective. So either I'm going to abstain or vote against, but I have to flag that. And there's a couple of things also on the complaints list as well, which I will raise, which was slightly concerning. So Q3, upheld complaint summary, number 9, conduct of housing officer. Officer reminded of conduct. Now, frankly, to be honest with you, I don't expect our officers to ever drop the ball with their conduct. And frankly, I'm surprised that officer is still with us if you upheld that complaint and you thought it was a valid complaint, or perhaps the answer there should have been different. And I would come back to the missed access appointments where it seems to be very poorly determined whether someone gets compensation for a missed appointment. Do only the people that ask for it get it, or does everyone get it where someone's out of pocket because they took the afternoon off from work? Because I do think we should have a consistent approach to this, and it shouldn't just be the loudest voices that actually get the compensation if they've sat in all afternoon to then have to take another day off work on another occasion. And I'm sorry it's a bit negative, but I do really like the housing team, and under you, Chair, I do like what the housing committee is doing, but I think at the moment our contractor's not doing much for us.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. I would say that item 10, the Compliance Repair Service Report, you will have an opportunity to provide your feedback directly to Axis, who are here today, and hopefully they will be able to respond. So rather than have a conversation with Axis at this one, if we can move that to that item. Ms Stretch, did you want to come back on any of the points? I know this report obviously wasn't generated by the housing team, it's generated by customers, the customer team, so go ahead.
So in relation to the bits that are green, that isn't relation to performance that people are receiving, that is in relation to specific bits in the corporate plan, so the housing improvement plan and the planned works programme. So it's progress against the corporate priorities, which is why it's green. It's not in terms of performance, so that's in relation to that. Obviously, we can come, the summary slide that you get from complaints probably doesn't give you enough detail, and we will come back to you. In relation to the conduct of an individual member of staff, again, when we send back the feedback about the round as an action from this committee, we'll give you some more detail. In relation to sometimes there are issues with conduct, it's not as simple as it may seem in terms of employment. Obviously, we will tackle issues, but I will give the committee further update around that detail. And in relation to compensation, I can assure you it's not who shouts the loudest. We are looking at all complaints. In relation with the local government ombudsman's kind of remedies guide, so where there are failures, we are looking at the level of compensation that should be given depending on obviously what has happened, and it is not just being given to people who are asking for it. We are looking at that as a remedy to be responsive to the fact that the complaint has happened and remedying, putting that right. So yeah, I can assure you that there is compensation being provided where there are things such as missed appointments or poor levels of service. The level of compensation that will be given out would be dependent on what happened in the individual case, but it is not just being given to people who are asking for it. We are working on that in line with the Ombudsman's guidelines for remedies.
Okay, if we've got no further speakers, I'll just move to vote on that one, which is just to note this report. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's passed. We'll move to item 9, which is the HRA Planned Works Programme 26-27. The report begins on page 87 of the agenda. This report provides an overview of the planned works programme delivered in 25-26 and sets out the proposed planned work programme for 26-27. Before I move to Ms Burton, I just want to note that unfortunately it's Ms Burton's final committee on this council, so we're very sorry to lose Carol, and I think you've done a fantastic job in improving our stock and make sure it's turning the corner and getting much better, so half the committee will thank you for your hard work. But do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for everyone for the kind words. Obviously, the programme sets out what we have completed in this financial year in comparison to what we've sort of committed to when the Planned Works programme was approved. For next year, the priority will be around fire safety works. The Building Safety Act 2022 came in, and we will still have to focus quite heavily on fire safety works as a priority over new kitchens, new bathrooms, doors. So that's the only bits I want to add, but which will be to residents' disappointment, but unfortunately the health and safety priorities will be the most important. But happy to take questions, Chair.
Councillor Mayo.
Thank you, Chair. Very good report. I'm going to comment quickly about, I think it's page 111 and 112, which were block refurbishment projects in my ward. And a word of thanks, really, and I'm very sorry to hear Mrs. Burton's leaving, because she was engaged with me about a year ago when we kicked this off, and we did have some initial issues in terms of communication to tenants, expectation setting and all the rest of it. Once we had our initial issue and we worked out a plan together in terms of communication, I had no further issues raised to me at all after that, so it shows that response was, you know, I was really grateful for it and working well on that. I've since seen a lot of the repairs. The roofs are way better. The feedback I've got from tenants in those blocks is positive. Obviously, they were very disappointed, some of them, to receive bills for it, but actually I was surprised at how understanding they were once everything was explained to them. And frankly, it was a result of, work not being done for many, many years before Lauren and the team grasped the nettle and said, this has got to be done. So thank you very, very much for doing that in my own ward and elsewhere. I'm pleased to see there are more plans for this coming year. And if we continue that communication path, hopefully we will not hit any more bumps in the road. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, it's just a question. So it says that the budget is for 5 million, but when the total for the works is 5.4 million. So I'm just concerned that not all the works are going to be undertaken. So can I just seek confirmation that we are able to undertake all those works and meet that total of 5.4 million?
Yeah, Ms. Burton.
The confirmed budget in our budgets have been approved is 5.3 million. You would always on plan work programmes have an element of over-programming anyway, because naturally some things do slip. But yeah, absolutely the resources will be there to deliver next year's programme.
Can I just express my personal thanks to you? You are amazing. I think we should have a recommendation 5 which says that you're not allowed to leave. And I also didn't know that you'd engaged to Councillor Mayo. I didn't know about that. So I'd like to pass on my congratulations to that. Yeah, exactly. Can I pass? You are exceptional. You have delivered consistently, not only for this committee but for our residents. Nothing's ever been too much trouble for you. And thank you, which will come on to the next item, but thank you for also holding access to account. You really have made a difference, not only to us as councillors, but you've made a difference to our residents, and we really do owe you a great deal of thanks. Truly, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair. Can I echo the comments of Councillor Slade? Carol is an absolutely exceptional officer. She is an absolute ambassador for this council, and she has been such a large presence within the housing team. One or two of our residents who occasionally can get very upset are only too glowing about Carol, because they know when Carol's on it that it gets sorted. So thank you very much on a personal level for everything you've done for Councillor Patel and all the other 38 councillors, whatever, across the chamber. I just want to be positive on this programme, because the planned maintenance programme is an absolute success. It gives clear visibility over what's coming. It's very, very organised. Both Lauren and yourself have delivered something which we have high confidence that it will actually happen. I was in the flats in Whittingham Road the other day, and with the new solid doors front and back to keep the kids out from smoking weed, And it gives a lot of confidence and safety to the residents who live in that block now, the roofs that have gone on those buildings. There's just so many things that have been done that are a success of this, and a lot of that's down to you as an individual, but you collectively as a housing team. So thank you very much, and thank you to you, Chair, for making sure that this has progressed well over the last few years. It's a success across the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. If I got no further speakers, I forgot to move the recommendations, so I will move the recommendations R1 through R4. Do I have a seconder?
Second, Chair.
Thank you very much. All those in favour? Thank you again. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so the item everyone's been waiting for, item 10, Compliance and Repair Service Update. The report begins on page 117 of the agenda. The report provides an update on the housing compliance position and repairs service delivery. Ms. Stretch, do you have anything to add?
So as the report states, after a long period of consistent performance, I know we've had odd kind of cases in the past, but generally it's been consistent performance across the repairs function. There has been a reduced service level across responsive repairs work stream in the last few months. As just been indicated, there are higher than acceptable levels of overdue work in progress cases, and there's been an increase in the average age of those cases, which has resulted in elevated levels of dissatisfaction and a higher number of complaints than usual. I think it's important to note that this is not affecting the compliance work streams, and so we are still at a very high level of compliance, and that there are still a significant number of repairs that are raised every month and are completed as within the expected performance. But nevertheless, the Council does expect a higher level of performance from Axis, but we have been working with them to ensure that the service returns to the level that we've experienced previously and that we expect to be delivered to our tenants. The issues have been raised at our senior contracts meeting and have been accepted by Axis, who have been responding by putting in place a recovery plan to address these issues, and in extra attendees tonight. The presentation, therefore, will have a slight amendment from its usual focus, in that it is focusing on the recovery position that we are in, and that we what we would need to do to hope to see those levels to return to the previous levels that we have been used to. So I will hand over to Ms Burton and Mr Houlihan to do that presentation, but happy to take questions afterwards.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to go through a couple of slides around the compliance, to give you an overview of where we were at the end of January, and then I'll pass over to Mr Houlihan. So the usual chart that everybody sees, which you'll see slightly different. This time last year I was confidently saying we were 100% compliant on gas servicing and electrical safety. Unfortunately, we've got one case on the gas safety that we've not been able to resolve for a number of reasons, which obviously I won't go into here. But I am pleased to say that for electrical safety, we are fully compliant on both blocks and individual dwellings, so that's a really positive step. We have started to make slight progress on the water hygiene and the asbestos, which have been the real difficult cases in trying to get people to allow us into their properties. As you will see from the previous item, we've completed the first lift refurbishment at one of our high-rise buildings, and we will be renewing the lifts in the remaining high-rise buildings and other low-rise sites in the coming year, which will be positive. And the fire risk assessments are, we are 100% in completing our fire risk assessments, so it's a lot of the actions that are now within the next 3 to 5 years on the planned works programme, the items that they're overdue or incomplete. And the explanation, I'm not going to go into the words, but it's all there for everybody to see. I'll pass over to Mr Houlihan now.
Apologies all, I should have joined Carol. Thanks for having us again. In terms of repairs performance, Requested statistics provided in terms of orders raised across gas and repairs. Number of repairs completed first time, obviously significantly low on the repairs side, but maintained on gas. And then average days to complete, an improving picture at the moment, but obviously largely driven by emergency repairs, which do affect the average end-to-end rather than a positive report at this time. Is it the space? Thank you, Carol. Appointments kept, obviously a dwindling performance picture, which is where an improvement plan was instigated in January, so I will get to that piece in a second. And obviously reflected in the work in progress, the stagnation through the quarter at the end of the last year, Q3. Whereby there wasn't the reductions that were forecast through November, they weren't sustained. And obviously we've seen an increase through January as well, which, as Lauren outlined, results in increased complaints and increased escalations. And void performance as a roundout is obviously maintained within target, and obviously 100% performance to target as well, so no concerns on voids. Thank you. Following December's meeting, and obviously meetings with Carol and with Lauren, both senior levels and operational levels, there is it's an 18-task improvement plan. It's focused on 3 areas. The 3 areas are governed by resourcing and deployment. So I think you've all highlighted issues around deployment of engineers to and from appointments. So it's focused on that. Tenant communication and engagement, ensuring that we've got the right methods and media in terms of ensuring access to tenants and their comms, and then management and ownership. I'm joined today by Director Alan from Axis as well. He's representing the senior management team for Axis. As Lauren said, it was escalated at our core group. And with that, obviously, we are continuing not only investing in the improvement plan, but the wider improvement. Causes for kind of flux in terms of performance has been driven by engineer capacity. We've seen a reduction in engineer capacity for various reasons. Seasonal, some of them, we make some allowances, trade demand changes, an increased absence. November was very painful for the business, and our resilience planning wasn't robust enough. Scheduling performance, we've had and do have a continued issue around scheduling performance, and it is one of our key areas for improvement. And comms, obviously, around is linked to scheduler and scheduling performance, but ensuring that communication is made linked to missed appointments and attendances. So key areas driven by essentially complaint feedback, plus our own KPI failure, our performance indicator failure, and then working towards improvement. Sorry, Carrie, thank you. So some of the things that obviously have been over the last month changed through sort of end of January into February following identification of these issues and areas. We've changed resource deployment. So from a business perspective, we've currently got a dedicated resource team that we've changed. So we've increased plumbing and electrical capacity that's governed by trade. So looking at our trade demand versus capacity. We've increased direct labour deployment, so coming away from subcontractor labour deployment and increasing direct labour, our own engineers. And then obviously what we've also done is reduce deployment areas. So this is about trying to breed familiarity with engineers and certain stock. So where we've got higher density of stock in the Brentwood Borough Council area, how we can improve familiarity of that stock to improve engineers' knowledge of stock and their familiarity with access and locations. We've upskilled engineers. One of the key complaints that we had over the last period was our responsiveness to hot water repairs, and obviously that is an essential right to repair item. So we've actually now got 6 engineers that are capable of undertaking it, which has increased from 2, and that's been achieved and signed off at the beginning of February, whereby we've put our engineers on courses that allow them to undertake those repairs. That's outside of heating in terms of gas. That's cylinder, electrical, and those associated repairs. We are changing our management and ownership in terms of challenge of completion failure, so engineers identifying works as complete, or indeed works being raised or not raised at point of attendance. We've introduced live whip calls, so this is where we're looking to engage with a resident whilst an engineer is on site. It's a small percentage in terms of what we're able to do, but it's about being able to speak to a resident at the time we're in the property to make sure that they understand what's going on, because some of the feedback we've received as well is around engineers' explanation of repairs. Access's main focus has been around our scheduling function, and one of the things, if needs, Alan can elaborate on as well. We've currently got the Kaizen Institute in, which are essentially helping us remap our scheduling function. We identify as a business that there's need for improvement, not just for Brentwood, but as a service provision from Access, and the reason for having the Kaizen Institute in. We've employed and are now working with a head of scheduling and a deputy head of scheduling. So these are core functions within our business now to support the scheduling function. And we are currently working with individuals across the scheduling function around personal development plans and or recruitment needs. They're the activity up till kind of end of February, the live activity. We've got ongoing review of comms in terms of IT. Access are reliant on a text message service. We've got a lot of what we would call opt-out options. We're not a marketing company, so we're reviewing our options in terms of removing the opt-out and how we can ensure that we can access, as a service provider, the text message function. We're increasing supervisor capacity, not through any recruitment, but through responsibility changes to ensure that there's more on-site capacity of supervisors. Meeting with Carol and Lauren weekly now as well. I think you mentioned the words earlier, being held account. These every week now, there is accountable meetings with Carol and Lauren. And then obviously the scheduling capacity as well, effective what will be, it has required some recruitment and responsibility change. Effective next Monday, there is an additional 2 within the team to help recovery, i.e. expedited, so extra hands, physical people, excuse the expression, hands on the pump, to obviously now move that forward, which has obviously come from the core group escalation and obviously concerns raised here. And then aside to that, we've obviously got the trade support that we've got supporting our increase in PAYEs. There isn't necessarily a capacity issue on site. This is about being able to contact residents and book those appointments and then uphold those appointments. That is where we're currently focused our improvement.
That's it.
And that is where it's gone.
Happy to take any questions.
I'm looking for members to talk. Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start with the independent ARC investigation. In May 21, found Access failed to deliver even basic core housing services effectively. It also found there was a poor operating culture of a lack of care and respect for tenants and systemic communication issues. Failings of Croydon's Council Repairs Service. 5 years on, this committee and members are experiencing these failings. Yes, on a lesser scale from Regina Road, but 5 years on, those failings are still present within Access. The drop in standard has compromised officer resource and member resource. The report states that officers are now having to resort to hold meetings fortnightly. I myself are undertaking measures to monitor Facebook, to look at the messages that residents are posting. They are angry, they feel let down by Brentwood Borough Council, they feel let down by their elected representatives. They don't understand that the failings has come from Access, but we have to manage that. So that's a further drain on resource. But I'm having to read very angry posts to which one resident, because of our perceived failings, put "bring back the guillotine." We should not have to face those comments because of Access failings. We as a committee, we are united. Officers are united. This is not good enough. Brentwood residents, members and officers deserve better. And it's unacceptable that the failings from the independent ARC investigation of a poor operating culture, lack of care and respect, systemic communication were to remain failing of Access. You are our repair service. You represent us. Your standard is not our standard. I should not, in this current day and age, be having to read that a resident has been left with hot water and no heating for 6 weeks, for then on the day of the repair, that a phone call at 4:15 to advise that you're not attending, but also in providing no additional date or when the repairs were undertaken. I should not be receiving comments from residents that access have turned up, but they haven't got the equipment, including paint. I should not have residents writing to me offering to go and buy the paint to go and get the job done. This is completely and utterly unacceptable. Chris has stood here and been your representative. However, it should have been evident to Access that your strategies were not working and you should have appeared sooner. It shouldn't have been down to a member to request that senior members come in to hear these comments. Chris has stood there and taken this, and at times I have felt very uncomfortable relaying this to Chris. Looking at this report, again, I ask myself, where's your contingency plan? For 4 years, I've heard at this time of year, sickness, seasonal, staff shortages. 4 years on, where are your contingency plans? Why do we get the same information? We do not seem to see any change. And then, for instance, this report, the work in progress. How can this be so high? How can the figures for the period for 2,858, with a total now of 2,299 undertaken, that leaves 559 outstanding. And if my maths are correct, that's 103 gas and 456 repairs. The outstanding figure is too high. And repeating myself, this may be your standard, but it's not our standard. I'm grateful you've come in. You've heard Councillor Barber's comments earlier. I hope that you'll take notice of my comments. We are united as a committee on this. We are united with the officers, and I think you should really actually start taking responsibility for your actions, including the drain on resources everywhere and the impact on our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't know if anyone from Access wants to come back on any of those comments.
Please. I can only apologise for the failures that have taken place. The service on the compliance is pretty good. That's where I'd expect to see the repairs. I will be helping Chris and going through stuff to bring it up to the standard that you're wishing for. You can only apologise for the lack of resource and everything that's taken place within Brentwood. It's not a general consumption of general issue across the whole business. It just seems to have happened here and a couple of other little contracts which we need to address, and that we're here to support Chris and take it forward and ensure that the right resources are in the right place. We're also looking at new processes and procedures with Kaizen, who have come in to look at the repairs, why the failures have taken place as well. So they're doing an in-depth review of the repairs service, so that when that's all completed, we can actually come back and give you a bit more information on how that will change and progress going forwards. But I apologise to any inconvenience to any of your staff, and we're only here to support, and we want to make sure this contract is successful at all times.
Okay, thank you. Just on Councillor Slade and the residents' Facebook's comments, I think nothing warrants anyone to speak to a member or officer in that way on Facebook, and if you do have those comments, please report them to police as well. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to be fair to Access. There are times where we get compliments about the work that's performed, and actually, usually it's come from someone who's complained about another Access representative, which gives me more weight when they complain that someone was bad and someone was good. I actually think they're probably going to be being fair about people. A couple of things. First of all, I don't know if the electronic documents online have it, but could we please have sight of a readable copy of those of that plan? Because it's done at a point where I can see replace roofing contractor, replace another contractor, replace another contractor, but I can't read it properly. I would like that circulated to the Housing Committee members, please. I think that would be useful for us to have sight of it. The one thing that's not on here, and unfortunately I beat up my opposition councillors for this a lot, so don't worry, I'm not picking on just you. There are no dates for when this is going to be delivered. You've got a recovery plan, and a recovery plan would say we're going to be up to the standard over this period of time. This plan needs to come back to the next housing committee with some dates on it, because, you know, and also we talked about having weekly meetings with the housing team. Will those housing team meetings cease once you're back up to the right standard? We don't have any idea as housing committee members, and we should when we're voting on the decisions around housing. Couple of things I would just chuck into the mix. One complaint I had was from a resident saying the access man's turned up, he's gone away to get a part. And I said, well, where's he gone? And she said, he's driven to Romford. Now, that resident lives within 100 metres of a screw fix in Hutton. So why the person had to go to B&Q in Romford in rush hour and come back is beyond me. I'm not picking on the particular individual, but maybe there's an account you've got with B&Q that, and you need to just look at the way you work within your company, but that can't be efficient. And the other thing is on the sickness cover. You will, as a company, have people phone in sick. Yeah, but just like the council has the bins to empty, whether someone phones in sick or not, you have to have a mechanism that copes with that sickness, and it should not be that someone has an appointment which they've taken time off work for, which they've waited weeks for, when they're under stress, perhaps in other ways, to then find out that they're not coming after all. Nothing is worse than that. It's the worst possible feeling in the world, and you need to have a process, and that's not rocket science, and it's just what you probably normally do in other areas. But your competitors certainly will be doing it, and please just look at those processes. But can I ask, please, Chair, that we have a report that comes back to this committee with dates for resolution in, because we can't just be told there's a plan in progress and we'll come back to you when it improves, because that's not good enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barber. If I'm Chair at that point, I will definitely make sure that it comes back.
I hope you are.
Mr. Houlihan.
I can confirm, obviously, it is a small plan, but there are dates on there in both. If you can't see it, one of the columns is a target date, and then there's a secondary tab in the plan that obviously has. It just needs to be circulated. So.
Final question, and I'll be quiet. In that case, can you tell me when you think you'll be back into a reasonable level of service that meets the KPIs that you've agreed with the council, please?
So I'll just answer the two other bits and then that question. I've made note of them, if that's all right. Obviously, in terms of the example you've given around the engineer travelling to B&Q in Romford, it's the same trade card that serves B&Q and Screwfix. So obviously that is one of the reasons why we've introduced the live whip calls, because engineers are making those decisions to go to a certain trade centre that impact resident, and they're not communicating that to the resident in an accurate way. And that's part of the drive for that live whip call, to talk to the residents and say, he's gone, are we aware, can we interject, can we improve that, and then put management activity over that individual. In terms of the dates that are given, it's a monthly target in terms of a reduction plan over 3 months initially. To achieve a return within 3 months was the first goal, and then obviously a 6 months maintain and deliver. So it's between January and June is the actual overall target plan, with different targets for each month. And that is what has been set out in the plan. That is based around resourcing it. That is based around the recruitment period to obviously resource it. And we have got a demand versus capacity analysis. Unfortunately, when we're operating at a demand versus capacity analysis that falls short, there is a delay in responsiveness. So if we are 2 engineers short, and that is where Kaizen are coming in, because essentially they're saying we need to operate at a higher capacity than what we've currently got set and improve the service because of these failures. You can speak, yeah, should you?
I'll just add to that. Also, we've got a team in reviewing all van stocks, so van stock improvement and a new app, a van stock, vehicle stock. So each vehicle, yeah. So every vehicle has a stock on it, and that's all being reviewed. We've got a team actually reviewing all vehicle stocks to increase the first time fix, to save going back to an appointment, because what's really annoying is that what's in that van needs to improve and be better in relation to your stock. And if we can complete first time, that leaves us another space for the next appointment for the next customer, instead of wasting time backwards and forwards. So that is something that's being reviewed at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Mayor.
I'm not going to add to some excellent summaries and comments by my councillor colleagues, because they've they've articulated all of our frustrations extremely well. I am somewhat confused by the amount of references to subcontractors and contractors, and you've got a capacity problem. Okay, I'm not going to tell you how to do your jobs, but I don't understand. On what basis are you using contractors? Is it to add to capacity? Is it because you've got skills shortages? And also, what sort of agreements do you have with these subcontractors and contractors? Do you have recourse when they don't perform? And if there is any compensation due from those subcontractors, are you keeping it or are we getting it?
Yep, Mr. Houlihan.
So we use subcontractors to support deliveries. We've got both direct labour, as I said, PA, we call them PAYE, apologies for the term, it's direct labour. And then we have subcontractors. Now subcontractors will deliver either specialisms, so we may have drainage companies, roofing companies, asbestos companies that we would deem better delivered by a subcontractor. And then we'll have supporting subcontractors in the form of potential plumbing companies. They may provide commercial support that may not be relevant for a domestic plumber, which would be our 90% or a 95% work. In terms of the terms, we have supplier framework agreements in place with each of them, so there are recourse and there are measures in place for managing their delivery, their attendances, and if there are, in terms of recourse by default, if a failure of work is undertaken, i.e. quality of work or failure of work, then we will have retentions held against them, but it's for the remediation of the work. In terms of recovery of it, it's a fixed price contract in the main. It wouldn't, if there were any returns in terms of exclusion work, excuse me, for any chargeable work, that would be returned to the council in the same way that the compensation mechanisms works. So hopefully that explains it.
Okay, Councillor Slade.
Chair, it's just touching on the point where, which I agree with Councillor Barber, I hope you are, but we're in a situation where you may not be the chair in June, Carol's not with us, and I may not be back. So could I just ask on any handover that can you just ask the new chair to, if it's not yourself, that that we have more attendance by senior members of Axis, because as I said earlier, I feel at times very uncomfortable directing this at Chris. And as I've said, I do think that he should have had more support from his senior management. They should have seen, it should have been more evident to them, especially with the service failure. And going back to my earlier point, it shouldn't be down to members to request that are senior members. So could you just consider that going forward, that Axis do regularly have a senior member in attendance? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. I would say over the last 3 years I've been chair, Mr Houlihan has been here almost at every committee meeting. But yes, and senior members, and we'll try and make that as required. Councillor Baldock.
This is maybe not even for this committee, but it's to do with the funds that are raised from Access that come back to the council to be used for good works. Now, those funds ultimately come from the subcontractors, am I right?
Sorry, Councillor Baldock, you're talking about the community fund?
No.
Yeah, it could be the community fund.
The community fund. Okay,
now,
yes. I mean,
I like the community fund. I think it's great, but I just want to say, kind of go on record and say, I think it's always a bad idea to structure it that way, because as a subcontractor to facilities maintenance companies, not for local authorities, not for Access, but for others, some of the biggest at times in the past as well, where they do have that structure, you end up with bad contractors, and you end up with contractors putting up their prices in order to that they can give that percentage kickback. I'm not saying, I know it's all above board. I'm not saying it's anything wrong. I know it's probably not this committee, this administration. I'm just saying, in principle, as somebody who works in the field, I think it's a bad way of going about doing business. That's all it is. Do you understand what I'm...
Yes, thank you, Councillor Baldock. Actually, when I was in opposition, the reason I voted against the Access contract was that very reason.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Well, like I said, I wasn't saying it was your administration or
Councillor Haigh.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
can I personally thank Chris for coming along this evening, because you are facing the music, and it's brave of you to do so, because clearly whatever the problems are, they're not all personally your fault, but you are the conduit through which we have to express those concerns. I see in the agenda that we have that there's reference to poor performance can lead to increased complaints and disrepair claims, and that there is provision within the contract to recover any costs from Access Europe should they arise due to poor performance. I don't know if this is a question which should be directed at you or to officers, but I ask this question not wanting to raise revenue, because as far as I'm concerned, there should be no need for us to raise revenue, but rather that I've just read would seem to operate as a disincentive for poor performance, because you don't have to pay if you perform well, but potentially you do if you don't. And I don't know, do we claim compensation over
Same stretch.
the
Do you
last
want to answer
12
that one?
months? Have we, or would we? No.
Yes, so I've spoken in this chamber many times that this is a partnership with Axis, and we like to view it as such, and we work well together. And my comments when we introduced this report were that we have raised this poor performance with Axis, and I think that the strength in the relationship has been that has been taken on board, and those meetings are taking place and we are working together. However, we are representative of our tenants, and where there has been fault by Axis and it leads to payments being made, there is provision in the contract, and at times such as this we will enact those matters of the contract as we should, for our tenants to look after their interest, and in some ways on a commercial arrangement to, exactly as you say, incentivise that performance improves. So while we still view this and we have a very good working relationship with Axis senior managers, it's a commercial arrangement as well. Those provisions are in the contract, and myself and Carol look to use all things at our disposal to ensure that the performance remains high and that our tenants aren't disadvantaged by any poor performance.
Right, thank you everyone. I think I'm going to conclude this item at this point and move the recommendation that we note this report. Do I have a seconder?
Second, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, and I'll move to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? Thank you very much. That's carried. Just thank you very much, Axis, for coming today. I would say, in conclusion, I think you've heard the committee's opinion on your current performance, and we do expect improvements very soon. Thank you. Right, so item 12, exclusion of the press and public. To consider excluding the press and public from the meeting during the consideration of the following items of the business on the grounds it's likely that if members of the press or the public were present during the consideration of these items, it would disclose to them exempt information as defined by paragraphs 3 of the Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, and the public interest in disclosing that information.